Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Morgan.
Senator. Yes, I know today we'll be speaking about this extended 3 week ceasefire that's going on, this renewed talks in Pakistan with notably absent would be J.D. Vance. We have Jared Kushner and Witkoff there to try and seal the deal if there is one to be made. So I just want to go ahead and pass it to you, Senator, and just kind of give us an update on all that.
Okay. Okay. Now, let me back up just a little bit to April the 17th. We had completed negotiations, the United States and Iran, and it appears to me that we had arrived at an agreement. And as a result of that, on April 17th, Iran announced a full, complete reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. However, and you have to read the tea leaves at this point. You can't you can't know exactly what's going on, but it appears to me that probably Netanyahu balked at the agreement that we had and said that he was not going to approve of it. And as a result, the U.S. announced that it would not abide by this apparent agreement. And then everything sort of went out of control. I think it was the understanding of the Iranians that the straits would be completely open to everybody's traffic, not just to American and Israeli traffic. So the Iranians felt like this was an agreement to open the straits, period. So, and it is in the nature of Israeli negotiations to be very duplicitous and very unreliable partners. There's a long, long history. I mean, this goes back forever. But in any event, the next thing we have is when the U.S. installs a blockade with great fanfare and says, well, we've put in a military blockade and now we're going to finish off the Iranians with this blockade. Then the Iranians just responded and said, okay, we're going to block the Strait of Hormuz, and we're not going to allow traffic to go out. And as a consequence, they made the announcement. There were some ships that thought, well, maybe this isn't for real, and they tried to get out, and Iran fired on several of the ships, and pretty effective fires, and as a result, it completely cut traffic in and out of the strait. Now, at the same time, now the Pentagon is saying, well, now Iran is planning on putting in new sea mines. And one of the problems we're having, the United States alliance is having, is that the air people reported to the president that, oh, we've wiped out all of the Iranian Navy and so forth. And there were 7 old, outmoded frigates that were sent to the bottom, but that's not the naval strength of Iran. Iran, because it is a defensive country. It's not a country that goes out and makes wars all over the place. So they're able to do things right at their borders that other people can't. And one of the things is they've got this fleet of Boston whaler type boats, this small boats, like, if you had a good bit of money, you might just buy one yourself and go out and fix it up. And this is what they've done. Instead of having these immensely costly ships that cross the oceans, all they need is something that can go out in the 21-mile Strait of Hormuz. And so what they've done President Trump calls them the wise guy boats. And okay, they are they are the wise guy boats. I mean, these are guys who go out and within the last couple of days, they have boarded a couple of ships. One huge cargo ship that was going out. They came out and they went up the side, boarded the ship, and seized it. And so now, I would say that, with the exception of occasional ships that Iran allows out because they have some sort of a deal going and the ships are paying the required tolls, there is zero traffic moving. So there's a tremendous economic impact. And at this point, we have the worst global oil market disruption in history. And additionally, because Iran was very successful in knocking out natural gas production from Qatar, which is I would say, other than the United States, it's certainly the biggest in the world. There is, according to the International Energy Agency, they expect that there will be a natural gas shortage for the next 2 years. That's assuming everything just opened up tomorrow. There's going to be a gas shortage for a couple of years because of the strikes on Qatar. And then the third thing, which may be more disturbing than the first two, is that 30% of the world's fertilizer has been blocked. And it's driving up the cost of farming, which is going to drive up the cost of food. There's going to likely be very significant inflation in farm products. And it's happening right at the peak farming season in some countries like India. India is planning right now. And now, two types of fertilizer. The big thing that you want for immediate production is nitrogen. And now phosphate is also very important, but the immediate thing is the nitrogen. And that comes from ammonia and it comes from urea. And the price for urea, which is a very major nitrogen fertilizer, it's gone up from $80 to $180 a ton, an enormous increase. The cost of ammonia has jumped 40% above what it was last year. And keep in mind, farmers don't have some enormous slack in their system, in their finances to absorb this. They tend to be sort of, to live from hand to mouth to some extent. And as a consequence, 70% of farmers are having trouble buying enough fertilizer, and some of them are reducing the application rates. In other words, if you use 100 tons for a certain plot, you cut it down to 70 tons. Well, when you do that, you're cutting your agricultural production. So this is going on around the world. That's where we are right now, with sort of the background of what we're facing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even the UN has said that this continued prolonged war with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz is going to cause a global catastrophe when it comes to food supplies all across the world. So it doesn't just come to the electrical component to infrastructure, as also as the sustainable portion of food and resources that needed to sustain animals and all life that live in different countries. So it's very important to note that as well, because a lot of Americans are really kind of hammered to just think that it's just going to be gas prices, but it's going to be a lot more. And as well, like you mentioned, the true effects of this have not been felt. The oil tankers, they go very, very slow. I think they go as slow as like 15 miles per hour. I'm not sure if you can kind of provide more information on that.
I really don't have information on that. That would we we'll have to learn up on the speed of the tankers.
But I had heard that some of the ships that right prior to this engagement are just now kind of that were free flowing have just now reached their destination. So we haven't really had the effect of actual ships that have been cut off.
Well, and the distances are very great. It's not like you're going like when we bring oil from Venezuela. You're not going all that far if you're coming into refineries on the Gulf Coast. It's a fairly short distance to travel. Whereas if you're going from Iran to China or South Korea or India, you know, it's a considerable distance. And of course, you know, Europe is in such a mess right now. I mean, their governments make no sense. They make irrational decisions, and they're purposefully cutting off their access to Russian oil and natural gas, which is just one of the most historically bizarre things in history. But they've cut off their own nose to spite their face. And
I think it's important to note the attacks on energy infrastructure in the past. I mean, what would be 6 years alone? I mean, given by the Nord Stream pipeline, you know, all these different attacks of just really putting different countries in vulnerable states as it pertains to how they maintain energy and infrastructure. You know, like you said, in Europe, and we talked about it in the last show, a lot of countries in Asia rely heavily on the oil that is leaving the Strait of Hormuz. We kind of are in a different position. We don't really, I think even Hegseth has boasted about that it's not going to affect us as much as it's going to affect other countries that refuse to help us, is kind of what he had alluded to in one of his press conferences.
Yeah, but now, the problem with that is it is true in terms of we can, you know, we produce a tremendous amount of oil and we export a tremendous amount of oil. But the problem is that it's traded globally. So the prices go up in the United States, just like the prices go up in Europe or Asia. And we could say, well, you know, we always are going to have enough for our refineries because it's not cut off. But the problem is that for the folks on the street here in Chicago and in Baltimore and in Miami, they're paying a lot of money, and you know, these are not the billionaires who have yachts and so forth. These are the people who have a 10-year-old car and they're trying to keep gas in the tank so that they can get to work and get to the, you know, different places. And so to them, okay, you say, well, you're always going to have fuel, but at what price? And if you don't have the cash to pay for it, it's a problem.
Now, a big point of contention during the first talks was whether the ceasefire also included Iran's allies, which would be Lebanon. So far, Israel is still conducting operations in Lebanon. They're saying that they're going to go further into southern Lebanon. Reports are saying that now Israel now occupies more land than Russia occupies in Ukraine. And we're told that that's our ally, which is kind of ironic given that statement. But something surfaced in the news was one of the IDF soldiers was boasting online and took a photo, posted it himself, of them destroying a statue of Jesus Christ. We'll go ahead and put this on the stage.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit. I know that Israel is playing major damage control, but for those of us who have been paying attention, this is not new for IDF soldiers to act like this. So it is something that probably is from the top down. in the culture that they allow them to kind of have this not just lack of discipline and also boast about these events online. We know in Gaza itself, they have destroyed every church. No religion is spared from their genocide they conducted there. And then given in the West Bank, they just allowed a new ordinance for an illegal settlement that will completely knock out the entire Palestinian Christian community. As well as, I believe, about 2 years ago, they were bombing churches in southern Lebanon. Some of them were the oldest churches, had like some of the oldest covenants of nuns there. So let's go ahead and talk about this, because a lot of, I find it interesting, Israel's now kind of rebranding and damage control they're trying to do after this image was released.
Yes. You know, this is a very important incident, not because of this one incident, but because it graphically shows the tremendous antagonism that Israelis have towards Christianity. We're never really supposed to know that there are Christians in the Middle East. I was speaking to a young woman who was doing some work for me on my computer the other day, and I could tell that she was Arabic, but I noticed from her card that her name was Mariam, and which was Mary. And so I asked her. I said, you know, I do this all the time. I'm just curious about people. I said, where were you born, or where were your parents born? And she said, from Egypt, somewhere on the outskirts of Cairo. And then I said, and you're Christian? And she sort of lit up. She said, yes, I am. And I said, well, I could tell from your name. Anyway, she said, well, most people don't even know that there are Christians in Egypt. I said, yes. I said, it has one of the great communities of Christians in the world. About 10% of the entire Egyptian population are Christians. And now, shifting back to Lebanon was heavily Christian when the Europeans settled Palestine, now Israel, back in 1948. We had a great number of European Jewish people who came over. They occupied and eventually drove all of the indigenous Palestinians from much of what is now Israel. And we were never supposed to really know that those Palestinians were not all Muslims. We thought, oh, well, it's those Muslims. But no, the Muslims were living in harmony with the Christians. And when the Palestinian people were driven from their lands and their homes were stolen, their farms were stolen, then they didn't say, well, we'll just take over Islamic owned farms. Christians, Muslims, they were all driven out. And in some ways, there is a particular venom towards Christianity. And I think, Netanyahu has not helped at all, because he sort of gives free rein to the Israeli settlers, who are a truly sinister, nasty group, who really could be very closely compared to the Nazi brown shirts who ravaged Jewish communities on Kristallnacht back in the 20s in Germany.
Yeah,
Very similar tactics.
I want to pull up a video real quick.
Desecrated by the Israeli forces. You can see here that there's a bunch of
this just illustrates, this is another church. This is about a year ago that this happened in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, of just disregard for holy site. Soldiers used it as
metals, condiments, whatever you'd like. But I think one of the most offensive things that we have found in this church is the desecration of religious figurines. So this would have been Jesus. His head is cut off there. Residents tell me that that looks intentional, not part of an explosion or any fighting that may have taken place in this village. You can see here that the rest of the church also seems to have been used by the forces, the Israeli forces, for personal use, pillows, blankets, all in here. And again, just the entire church has been trashed. There's so much soil in it. A lot of it has also been burned. You can see how black these walls are. This kitchen, also belonging to the church, seems to have been used. You can see beans and coffee.
So I think we understand the point that we're trying to make of this isn't anything new.
No, it's not. It goes back, and it's, people who watch these things are aware that there are, very common incidents where the Jewish religious, when they encounter a Christian who is evident by their Christian clothing or whatever, that they'll spit on them. And it's very common in Israel, within Israel, that you'll have the Jewish clerics who will spit in the face of the Christian clerics, and so this is not a new thing at all. So it is very troubling what they do, and if I could, I wanted to move into the peace talks that are beginning today and what this is. Okay, so we've got Jared Kushner and we've got Witkoff going, but interestingly, the peace delegation does not include J.D. Vance. And I think for many of us watching this, J.D. Vance was potentially the closest we have to an honest broker. I think Kushner and Witkoff are widely understood to be, or at least perceived to be, agents of Israel, not necessarily formally, but their interests are Israeli interests. Their interests are financial interests that are linked to Israel in some fashion, usually just emotional, religious ties and so forth. But I think it is interesting that J.D. Vance has been, I won't say he's been held back, but he is not there. Mm-hmm. And it begins to raise a question about where we are headed. The Iranians also on Friday said that their people are not going to engage in direct talks with the United States. Under the influence of Israel, and I think Israel does a lot of this. One of the Israeli tactics is to murder the people that you're negotiating with. Mm-hmm. And they do this quite routinely, and they boast about it. They say, well, look at this, we've killed them. And then you have people saying, oh, well, look at this. The Iranians, they don't know who's in charge. Well, they know who's in charge. We just don't know who's in charge. Because the Israelis went in, and with our help, just slaughtered a great number of people, including the old line moderate, like the Ayatollah Khamenei, who was sort of rolled together with the original Ayatollah from 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini. Very easy to mix them up. Khomeini was just a brutal monster, a murderous fellow, I think. Khamenei was a moderate who understood the limits of his power, and he had to maneuver with the Iranian National Guard, so now we've got a new group who are not as gullible. They are not as trusting as the old moderate regime. And these are young people with tremendous energy, tremendous intellect. They're savvy, and they're not gonna fall for some of the tricks that Israel has played previously, and the United States, unfortunately. But it is beginning to look like the way that the two sides are approaching the peace talks, so-called peace talks. The U.S. has continued a massive air and naval buildup. We have a third U.S. carrier task force that is now in place, ready to go. We have rearmed. We have, replaced the missiles and so forth that were used up, and so at this point, some very interesting things are happening. The big thing is that April 24th, China warned that the shifting, unpredictable security conditions have caused them to put out an urgent advisory for Chinese nationals to leave Iran immediately while commercial routes are still available. Now, the reason this is important is that the last time that China issued a warning of this sort was the day before Operation Urgent Fury was unleashed. So the Chinese somehow apparently had advance warning of what was about to happen, and they issued that warning. So because of that, I take that as the fact that they have just issued a similar warning for the first time. I would view that as excuse me, I'm sorry. I would view that as being very important intelligence. It suggests that a fresh mass bombing campaign is perhaps about to commence, and we have indications from the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz. This was on April 22nd. And he said, Israel is ready to resume its war on Iran. He said the targets are marked. Israel's waiting for a green light from the United States. It says, first and foremost, to complete the elimination of the Khamenei dynasty. How he calls it a dynasty, it's a family. And you have the son, who apparently is very severely wounded in the attack that killed the family, including the Ayatollah Khamenei. So now you have the younger Khamenei. So Israel wants to go ahead and murder him also. And then and this again, going back to Israel Katz, he says, First and foremost, to complete the elimination of the Khamenei dynasty, the initiator of the extermination plan against Israel, which we're supposed to believe that they were going to exterminate Israel, and the successors of the leadership of the Iranian terror regime. In other words, they anticipate another sort of mass murder campaign, not only going after the military, but going after the civilian leadership, and to return Iran to the age of darkness and stone by blowing up energy, electricity facilities, and crushing national economic infrastructure. So this is the plan. It looks like Israel is locked and loaded. They announced they're having a 3-week ceasefire in Lebanon. I think there was a lot of pressure on the Trump administration because Israel had not abided by the initial peace agreement that was put in place, and they were slaughtering people in Lebanon, both Christians and Muslim. And so I think we don't know for sure. Trump will ultimately have to give the final go ahead, but there are very strong indications that we are on the verge of the attack that Trump talked about before, which is the destruction of all of the civilian infrastructure in Iran. Now, I think it remains to be seen even if we do that, does that open the Strait of Hormuz? I just don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
So what is your take on kind of the narrative that has been given to the American people on why we need to go to this war? I mean, bullet points are all over the place, from the fact that they attacked us 47 years ago, to the fact that we have to do this regime change, or we have to get them from stopping making a nuclear bomb. Either they have the nuclear bomb and we need the nuclear bomb, or we need the resources that they're going to make the nuclear bomb with. So what do you parse as, the actual narrative on why this is such a major drive, that the Americans are told that it's the most important thing that we need to get behind this war?
Yeah, it looks like the administration has seized on this one thing that is a little, easy to do in a soundbite, to say, well, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Now, if you go back and you look, the original Ayatollah Khomeini, the monster, he died shortly after the Islamic Revolution, and he was replaced by Ayatollah Khamenei, the one who served for many, many years, the one that I was in communication with on just one occasion, where he wanted to correct something that I had said, that he thought, well, this is more complex than you realize. And so have to excuse me. Someone is trying to get in touch with me, and I can't.
We're kind of nearing the end of the show, so they'll get
I apologize to our listeners for that. But in any event, they use this nuclear thing. Just within 4 years after taking control, the Ayatollah Khamenei, the new Ayatollah, issued a religious fatwa, which it's sort of like a Supreme Court decision. It is the highest legal and religious edict in the country, and he said it would be immoral for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and it would not have a nuclear weapon. Now, that held for decades until finally Iran was coming under attack. And at that point, I think it was just difficult for the Ayatollah Khamenei to maintain that edict completely. But he still did maintain it. But I think probably with the forces, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, I think they put pressure, and so they began to increase the concentration. I think what they were trying to say is, look, we have the ability to create a nuclear weapon if you continue aggression against us. So that was sort of the situation. But there has never been a time where the Central Intelligence Agency has said that it is the intention of Iran to produce nuclear weapons. Never. There has never been one. It's only been Israeli intelligence who said the opposite.
Now, how do Americans, I mean, I sometimes it's frustrating because this whole narrative, it just relies on the ignorance of the people to forget what happened a year ago. You know, we had Operation Midnight Hammer, which we were told by that the American people we had to take this action to destroy their enrichment facilities. And the enrichment facilities were completely destroyed. So to come back now with this whole premise that, no, we didn't destroy them, but we did destroy them. You know, we had the infamous hearing with Tulsi Gabbard, where in her written statement, she declared that Midnight Hammer destroyed all the enrichment facilities, but would not state it personally on the while she was in the hearing. So I don't, how do we parse that? I mean, do we just look at it as this blatant kind of propaganda that it is kind of a worse ploy to get Americans on board than, you know, weapons of mass destruction when it was, you know, in Iraq? Because we have these two, diverging narratives, whether either we destroyed the enrichment facilities, so therefore we don't have the attack, or we didn't destroy them, and therefore they're still on their way to make the nuclear weapon that according to our intelligence.
Yeah, I think you need to take a little bit broader view of it. There seems to be no indication that they're going to produce a nuclear weapon. But if they did, I think that's you need to ask, okay, if they had a nuclear weapon, we're always told, well, as soon as they get a nuclear weapon, they're going to fire it at New York or fire it at at Israel. And that's baloney. I mean, Israel has 600 nuclear bombs. They have nuclear missiles aboard submarines. They have a second attack capability that they could just annihilate everybody in Iran. So, and now the major media will never speak the words. They will never say, okay, Israel is one of the major nuclear powers on Earth, and they are the most aggressive force in the Middle East. So this idea that, well, somehow we can trust that Israel is going to be fine because they're going to be peaceful because they've got nuclear weapons to protect them. Baloney. They're out beating up on their neighbors in every direction, everywhere. They're one of the most aggressive nations on Earth. And so I think we could say, okay, so what? So what if Iran did have a nuclear weapon? Just like, so what? North Korea has nuclear weapons. So what? What's the problem? Pakistan, a hardcore Islamic country, they've got nuclear weapons. So what? Would we prefer not to have more nations with nuclear weapons? Well, take a look. Here are our allies, our NATO allies. You've got France now beginning to tout its nuclear power, and they're about to do some wargaming with Poland that will begin to teach Poland to use nuclear weapons. So clearly the idea is to spread nuclear weapons so that Poland will be nuclear armed. And so why are we so hung up on whether Iran has the ability to, whether they have a nuclear weapon or not? I'd prefer they don't, but to me, it's irrelevant. That no nation is going to fire their 1 or their 10 nuclear weapons at a nation that has 600 nuclear weapons. So that's irrelevant. Now, the other thing we're told is that that Iran is the world's greatest, meanest sponsor of global terrorism in the world. And if you look through that, and I would recommend our listeners go on AI and search for what is the foundation for that. What causes us? What facts do we have that support the idea that Iran is a sponsor of terrorism? There is essentially almost none. They go back to there was a Marine barracks bombing in Lebanon during the Ronald Reagan administration. I mean, ancient history. And that was a little bit cloudy. It was never entirely clear who did it. But okay, maybe, but why was it done? It was done because the U.S. had invaded Lebanon. And Ronald Reagan had the good sense to say, you know what, we don't know what the heck is going on over there. We're pulling out. And God bless him, he was a great president, and he tried to keep us out of these conflicts. But so you have that, and then they'll say, well, during the Iraq invasion, they provided weapons to the Iraqis that were used against the Americans who were invading Iraq. Well, Iraq is right on the Iranian border. When the U.S. invaded Iraq, we were an imminent threat to Iran. So the idea,
given that kind of narrative, what are we doing in Ukraine? We're the ones supplying, weapons to Ukraine in the war. So does that have the right for Russia to basically say that they're in a direct war with the United States if we're given that same narrative?
Yes. Yeah. So it's all fabrications, and it is all driven by Israel and their desire to expand and to seize additional lands. They have attacked Lebanon multiple times. I mean, there's no lengthy period of time that they haven't made some cross-border invasion of Lebanon. It's gone. It started in 1948. It has continued on, and now they are attempting to slaughter and exterminate the people closest to the border. Interestingly, some Israeli settlers went into Syria and began, trying to occupy Syria. I mean, there is no limit. These Israeli settlers are the most sinister, terroristic bunch of people on earth. And the idea that we're associated with them is I think it's just disgraceful for the United States to have anything to do with people like those.
I certainly agree, and I think it's ironic because we're told that Israel has to do these actions for the safety of the Israeli people, and it seems to be certainly safe if you have people going there and settling with their families. So it seems more of like a land grab than anything to me. And it's very interesting.
Not that long ago, if you remember, we talked on the show about the shepherd, the Palestinian shepherd in the West Bank, under domination of the Israeli army, and dozens of these settlers came in. They stripped all of the family naked, the mothers, the daughters, and mocked them, and then they zip tied the penis of the head of the family, just brutalized him horribly. Yeah. And before they left, they stole all 400 of the sheep that this shepherd family cared for. And they stole their wedding rings, their cell phones, their identification. Just a band of thieves and hideous people. I mean, those people should be in prison for life or executed, but nothing will be done under the Israeli government. Nothing is done to people who are criminals like that.
Yeah, it's such a shame, and I think Israel has killed numerous American citizens, and that's never spoken about. But even, I think, just in this past year, you've had 2 American citizens who were beaten to death by Israeli settlers. Yeah. And were stopped from getting medical aid by the IDF. So it shows this symbiotic relationship between the settlers and the IDF, where the IDF allows settlers to kind of do the dirty work. And allow them to take these really heinous actions and terrorize the communities so they can, consolidate more land. And I think that, we're wrapping up on the show today. So we just want to pass it off to you for closing remarks, and then we will close out the show.
Okay. Well, I just thought I'd mention on the way, I had a delightful time with a group of Marine Corps veterans who there were 9 survivors of my company who still get together after. This was a battle that we had in 1967. We had a group of about 190 Marines who were out confronting the elements of the 2nd NVA division. And we had a horrific battle. 33 of our people were killed. We don't know how many wounded, but it was something in the nature of 80, 85 people. We won the first of 7 medals of honor. That our battle was one thing, but the battle then generated this grand clash with the 2nd NVA division. And we have been getting together for a long, long time. And I was just delighted to be there. We had some of the widows of people who had passed on. And so they were great comrades in arms back in the days when we occupied Nui Laksan in the Quezon Valley. And it was just a great pleasure and an honor to me to be with each of these tremendous heroes. I suspect everybody had a Purple Heart. I think if you.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yes, thank you for sharing that and keeping us up to date in those events that you do and all that you do outside of that as well, Senator. So for that, I think I want to go ahead and tell everybody to tune in next week to focus on the news. Thank you, Senator.
Goodbye now.